Prince of Persia: The Two Thrones, the final game in the Saiyans trilogy, generally perceived as one of the worst in the Saiyans trilogy, and in my honest opinion, it's one of the better ones. Especially as a final game in the Saiyans trilogy, it tries its best to wrap up a lot of the story points, as well as try to combine what worked with Sands of Time and what worked with Warrior Within, but at the same time also what didn't work with Sands of Time and Warrior Within. My biggest complaint with Warrior Within was a lot of backtracking, and they removed that in The Two Thrones. My biggest problem with Sands of Time is maybe the combat was a little simple. Warrior Within improved it, and then Two Thrones didn't really do much with it. In Two Thrones, we saw the return of Farah. She doesn't really do a whole lot combat-wise. You don't have to escort her or anything like that. She's just in a few cutscenes and stuff like that. You do interact with her a little bit more than I think like maybe Sands of Time gave her. So she's given a little bit more character, but at the same time, the game feels rushed. That's the immediate impression that you get probably about halfway through the game, is that something was rushed, right? The writing or the story just kind of feels like it was pushed to the wayside. And I can't even really give praise to Yuri Lowenthal for voicing the prince. He's probably the standout, obviously usually is the standout in everything that he's in. And even in this, he's really not. He kind of sucks for a lot of the lines that are given. Like he just kind of phoned it in.
Someone helping us. Who is there? You have done me a great service. Show yourself, that I might thank you.
Ooh, his voice acting is phenomenal. And then suddenly there's some lines that he will give that are just iconic.
Most people think time is like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction. But I have seen the face of time, and I can tell you, they are wrong. Time is an ocean in a storm. You may wonder who I really am, and why I say this. Come, and I will tell you a tale like none you have ever heard.
But there's a lot of things slowing it down. And speaking of slowing down, the slowdown time and recall all return in Two Thrones, obviously. But they don't do much outside of that. A lot of your powers that you got from Warrior Within are just gone. You don't really have much of your abilities anymore. Towards the end of the game, and I mean the end of the game, like last hour, you get Eye of the Storm or Fury of the Storm, something like that. That just kind of blows up everyone around you, and it just kind of one-shots most people. But by that point, it's not necessary. The weapon that you get at that point is already one-shotting everybody, so it doesn't really matter. And I would say just the combat in general is the weak point, and it tends to be the weak point in most of the Prince of Persia games. Warrior Within maybe had too much of it, but in general, that was where the combat was at its best. Sands of Time, I feel like, had that perfect kind of blend. You didn't have a ton of combat, and if you did, it wasn't super duper difficult. Towards the end, you kind of had the ropes at that point, so you kind of know what you were doing, and it wasn't super difficult. Even I just played it on normal, so. But I feel like Two Thrones didn't really do anything with the combat. They introduced the stealth kill kind of mechanic. They call it a speed skill or speed kill, speed skill. Either way, they include that, and that's it. That's really all they kind of include, and I see that they gave a lot of effort towards it. They definitely put a lot of time into that, and then the combat kind of just got thrown to the wayside. Most combat encounters just boil down to you running up a wall, press X, running up a wall, press Y. That is it. Everything else doesn't really work against anybody. They kind of just block it, or they avoid it, or they attack you mid-animation. But as a finale for the trilogy, it does a good job. It combines everything. I think it was this close to being something fantastic, right? It was very close, and I think that's what annoyed me the most. The biggest setbacks in the game, once again, that it's the fact that it was rushed. A lot of the mechanics kind of just don't work. I wouldn't say majority of the time. I would say half the time. There's a lot of hardcore mechanics that just kind of feel underdeveloped. Like they were just thrown in there as quickly as possible, and then wasn't really fleshed out a whole lot. So there's a lot of instances where you just feel like the game is just fighting you more so than you are getting better at the game, so you'll get through the section better. It's just kind of chance whether or not some mechanics just decide to work or if they just don't work. On a different note, the game felt a lot more cinematic, I guess. There's a lot more QTEs involved. So this is around the time where God of War 1, God of War 2 came out, had a lot of QTEs, and this is kind of like the QTE start of the QTE era. So you have a lot of QTEs in bosses. All of the stealth kills are all QTEs. So there's a lot of instances of very like cinematic shots and stuff like that, and it's very cool. It has a lot of cool set pieces, I think, and I think it's a lot of it's just kind of ruined by it being kind of dumbed down because the game was rushed so bad. And I know I say the game's rushed a lot. Each one of these games was released within a year apart from each other. Not even a year, within a year apart from each other, which is insane. That is an insane turnaround development time. That's insanity. That each one of these was released within a year from each other. I mean, you would never get something like that. So I think looking at that time frame where each one is a year apart, these are very good for under a year of development time, and maybe even less, right? Like maybe it's like 7 months of actual development time, right? And that's crazy that they're at minimum at this quality. Nowadays, you'll get stuff with 10-year development cycles and it releases like crap, you know, and it doesn't work. Maybe the first 10 minutes of the game doesn't even work. These games at least work, and even now they still work. You just have to, you know, tweak your settings a little bit. You got to make sure you're definitely on. Have your FPS lower than 60. I always had it as 59 just to be safe. For a lot of these games, to be safe, you want to put your FPS at 59 because for the most part, they like to tie a lot of things to FPS. I think in this, it was mainly like how gravity worked and how the slow time, I think, worked. I would say overall, in my experience, I did not like really any of the Prince of Persia games besides Sands of Time. I think Sands of Time really stands above all of them. And most people will probably agree with that, you know? I feel like there's a few people that really love Warrior Within, and then they really love Two Thrones. And then they either hate, you know, one or the other. But most people adore Sands of Time, and then people just argue whether or not Warrior Within and Two Thrones are bad or Warrior Within and Two Thrones are great. Now, I'm not going to say Two Thrones is great or anything. I think there's a lot of stuff that sets it back, and you can't really ignore that. I know that it was a rushed development more so than the other games somehow, so I can excuse that. Obviously, that the development time was less than a year, which is insane. But I think the way the game finishes off, I think it finishes very strong. I think the last boss sucks, right? The last boss is not good. It's one of those things where you can definitely tell it was rushed, right? They definitely slapped it in there as quickly as possible and just, you know, called it a day. But I think like a lot of the dialogue that happens like towards the end of the game is really good. They did a really good job with writing. It's just the way that they deliver some of the lines, not good. It's just, they're not good performances at all. And the fact that a lot of the characters just, they do not look good. There's a lot of bug-eyed looking people, like they just don't have eyelids or something, or their hair's clipping through their neck, their hair's clipping through their face, and it just, a lot of the character models just look bad. They look, I don't know, uncanny, I guess. They don't look human. They look like they're like monsters or something, which is bizarre. Especially they couldn't even get the prince right. He looks like just a freak. He looks very freaky looking. And then I just can't get over how bad some of the voice acting is, and then how good it is. Some of it is. It doesn't really make sense that maybe they just cut out a ton, and I know that they cut out quite a bit, almost near the end of development, I believe, that they cut out a lot. So a lot of the dialogue kind of just feels squished, and it is. A lot of the dialogue is very squished towards the end. There's a lot of lore just kind of dumped on you towards the end of the game. But overall, Two Thrones really ends on a high note, I think. And it's in no way a bad game. I think a lot of people really crap on it, and I can't say that. I can't say it's a bad game. I can't say Warrior Within's a bad game. I just didn't like playing it. And I think Two Thrones, I just didn't like playing it. It wasn't really an enjoyable game to play. You were kind of just fighting against a lot of technical problems most of the time, and it leaves a sour taste in your mouth even when some of the dialogue's really good. Like there was points where I was like, wow, like he did a really good job like delivering those lines, and it's weighed down by a lot of technical problems, rushed development. And you know, this story we've seen 100 times. Like I can like reference like KOTOR 2, incredibly rushed, and people love that game. But it was clear minute one that it was very rushed, and a lot of stuff that it could have been just didn't happen. And unfortunately, we'll never see a finished Two Thrones game, you know. Even if somebody feels the need to make it themselves, they'll probably get, you know, hunted down or something by Ubisoft or whatever. So, you know, we'll never see how a finished Two Thrones would have been. We just kind of see the rushed finished product, unfortunately. So, still a great game. I don't think it's as great as everyone says it is. I think maybe just because, you know, back when it came out, these were like some of the greatest games that you could play at the time, right? You didn't have your God of War franchise yet. You were just about to have a God of War franchise, but you just hadn't had these Prince of Persia games that's what they were. Right, these were like the top level third-person action games that you could play, and this was during the era of just Ubisoft's height. Right, Ubisoft was just cooking with Splinter Cell, Prince of Persia. They had Beyond Good and Evil. They had at some point they had the Peter Jackson King Kong game. Like they were cooking at this point. So they a lot of good writing is definitely shown in this game. It's rushed, and for that it's just not a great game. It's a good game. It's not a bad game, and I think a lot of it was enjoyable. You know, I had a lot of fun with it, and that's really all I got. So let me know your guys' thoughts on the Two Thrones and the Prince of Persia: Sands trilogy in the comments below. Leaving a like and subscribing would greatly help me out. And I hope to catch you guys in the next one. See ya.